The doorbell rang, startling Karen from her afternoon nap. Grumbling, she pulled herself off the couch and shuffled over to the front door, fully prepared to give whoever was interrupting her precious alone time a piece of her mind. As she wrenched the door open, she was met with the sight of an unfamiliar man standing on her doorstep. He was dressed in a crisp suit, his salt and pepper hair neatly combed, and he carried a leather briefcase in one hand. "Can I help you?" Karen asked, her tone laced with annoyance. "Good afternoon, ma'am," the man replied, his voice polite and measured. "My name is Robert Hastings, and I'm the mayor of this town. I was hoping to speak with you about a matter of importance." Karen's eyes widened in surprise. The mayor? On her doorstep. A million thoughts raced through her mind as she tried to figure out what could possibly be so important that the town's highest-ranking official would come calling. "The mayor?" she stammered, suddenly feeling self-conscious in her frumpy pajamas and messy bun. Of course. Please come in." She stepped aside, allowing the mayor to enter. As he walked past her, Karen couldn't help but notice the subtle look of disdain that crossed his face as he took in her modest, slightly cluttered home. "Please, have a seat," Karen said, gesturing to the living room. "Can I get you something to drink?" "No, thank you," the mayor replied, lowering himself onto the floral-patterned sofa. "I'm afraid I don't have much time. I've come to discuss a rather delicate matter." Karen perched on the edge of the armchair, her heart pounding in her chest. "What is it?" The mayor cleared his throat, his brow furrowing. "It has come to my attention that you recently had a rather unpleasant encounter with one of my staff members." Karen's mind raced, trying to recall any recent interactions with city officials. Then it hit her, the incident with the code enforcement officer last week. "Oh, that," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "That was just a misunderstanding. I was perfectly within my rights to ask him to leave my property." The mayor's expression darkened. "That's where you're mistaken, Mrs. Simmons. The individual you so rudely expelled from your home was not a code enforcement officer, but rather the city's zoning commissioner." Karen felt her face flush with embarrassment. "The zoning commissioner?" she squeaked. "But he was trespassing on my land and he was here to follow up on a complaint filed by your neighbors regarding the condition of your property," the mayor interrupted, his voice stern. "As the zoning commissioner, it is his job to ensure that all residents are adhering to local ordinances." Karen opened her mouth to protest, but the mayor raised a hand, silencing her. "Mrs. Simmons, I understand that you may have strong opinions and shall we say, assertive personality," he said, his lips pursed. "However, that does not give you the right to abuse or disrespect city officials, especially those who are simply doing their jobs." Karen felt her face burning with shame. She had always prided herself on being a no-nonsense woman who didn't take any guff from anyone. But now she realized that her actions may have had more serious consequences than she had anticipated. "I'm sorry," she mumbled, her eyes downcast. "I didn't realize he was the zoning commissioner. I just thought he was, I don't know, some random city worker trying to give me a hard time." The mayor sighed heavily. "Well, that's the problem, isn't it? You seem to have a habit of making assumptions and jumping to conclusions without all the facts. And that kind of behavior has consequences." Karen swallowed hard, her stomach churning with dread. What kind of consequences? The mayor's expression darkened. "I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to attend a hearing before the city council to address your conduct," he said sternly. "Failure to cooperate could result in hefty fines or even potential legal action." Karen's heart sank. This was not the outcome she had been expecting. As the mayor stood to leave, she couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. What had she gotten herself into? The drive to City Hall the following week was one of the most nerve-wracking experiences of Karen's life. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel as she replayed the mayor's words in her mind, her stomach twisting with anxiety. As she pulled into the parking lot and made her way through the imposing double doors, Karen couldn't help but feel like an outsider. The marble floors and ornate chandeliers seemed to mock her modest, cluttered home. When she finally stepped into the council chambers, the faces of the 5 council members staring back at her didn't exactly put her at ease. "Mrs. Simmons, thank you for joining us today," the mayor said, his voice measured and formal. "As you know, we've called this hearing to address the incident that occurred last week with our zoning commissioner." Karen swallowed hard, her eyes darting around the room. "Yes, I understand," she stammered. "Now, can you please explain to the council why you felt it was appropriate to physically remove a city official from your property?" The mayor continued, his brow furrowed. Karen took a deep breath, trying to gather her thoughts. "Well, I didn't realize he was a city official," she began, her voice quivering. "I thought he was just some random person trespassing on my land, and Mrs. Simmons, I'm sorry, but that simply doesn't fly," one of the council members, a stern-looking woman with graying hair, interrupted. "As a resident of this town, you have a responsibility to be aware of and cooperate with local authorities, regardless of whether you recognize them or not." Karen felt her face flush with embarrassment. I know, and I feel terrible about it," she said, her voice pleading. I get so frustrated with people trying to tell me what to do on my own property. And That's no excuse," the mayor cut in, his expression hardening. "Your actions were disrespectful and unacceptable, and they have consequences." Karen's heart sank as the mayor proceeded to outline the potential penalties she could face, including fines and even potential legal action. "But I can't afford any fines," she blurted out, her voice laced with desperation. "I'm barely making ends meet as it is, and—" "Then perhaps you should have thought of that before you decided to manhandle a city official," the stern-looking council member retorted, her lips pursed. Karen felt her face burning with shame. She had always prided herself on being a tough, no-nonsense woman, but now she felt completely out of her depth. These were the movers and shakers of the town, the people whose opinions and decisions carried real weight, and she had managed to royally piss them off. As the council members continued to grill her, Karen could feel her composure slipping. She wanted to lash out, to defend herself, but she knew that would only make the situation worse. Finally, the mayor raised a hand, silencing the room. "Mrs. Simmons, after careful consideration, the council has decided that a formal reprimand and a fine of $500 will be the appropriate punishment for your actions." Karen's heart sank. $500. That was a devastating blow to her already tight budget. She opened her mouth to protest, but the mayor cut her off. "However," he continued, his expression softening slightly, "we are also willing to offer you an opportunity to work off the fine through community service. If you agree to volunteer for the town's beautification project for the next 3 months, we will waive the monetary penalty." Karen felt a glimmer of relief, but it was quickly overshadowed by a growing sense of dread. Community service? She hated the idea of having to answer to anyone, let alone the very people she had so brazenly disrespected. But as she looked around the stern faces of the council members, Karen knew she had no choice. Swallowing her pride, she nodded reluctantly. "Fine, I'll do it," she mumbled, her shoulders slumping in defeat. The mayor nodded, a hint of satisfaction in his expression. "Very well, Mrs. Simmons. You will report to City Hall this Saturday to begin your community service. Failure to comply will result in the full $500 fine being assessed." As Karen left the council chambers, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just made a deal with the devil. But she had no choice. She had to do whatever it took to avoid that crippling fine. Even if it meant swallowing her pride and submitting to the whims of the very people she had once thought she could defy. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, but Karen couldn't have felt gloomier as she dragged herself out of bed and prepared for her first day of community service. As she pulled up to City Hall, She could already see a group of volunteers gathered, all dressed in neon vests and wielding trash bags and gardening tools. Taking a deep breath, Karen steeled herself and stepped out of her car, approaching the crowd with a mixture of trepidation and resentment. "Ah, Mrs. Simmons, so glad you could join us," a familiar voice called out. Karen turned to see the mayor himself, a slight smile on his face as he strode towards her. "Mayor Hastings," Karen replied stiffly, her eyes narrowing. "Where do you need me?" The mayor's smile widened. "Eager to get started? I see. Wonderful. Follow me, and I'll show you where we could use an extra set of hands." As Karen trailed behind the mayor, she couldn't help but feel like the center of attention. The other volunteers eyed her curiously, no doubt aware of the circumstances that had landed her here. "All right, everyone, listen up," the mayor called out, addressing the group. "Today, we're focusing our efforts on sprucing up the downtown area. I want to see those flower beds weeded, the sidewalk swept, and any litter picked up. Mrs. Simmons here will be joining us, so let's make sure she feels welcome." Karen cringed inwardly as the mayor gestured towards her, drawing the eyes of the entire group. A few of the volunteers offered tentative smiles, but Karen could sense the underlying tension. "Now, let's get to work," the mayor declared, clapping his hands together. "Time's a-wasting." As the volunteers dispersed, Karen found herself alone with the mayor, who turned to her with a measured expression. "I appreciate you being here, Mrs. Simmons," he said, his tone surprisingly sincere. "I know this isn't exactly the way you'd prefer to spend your Saturday, but I hope you'll come to see it as an opportunity to make a positive contribution to our community." Karen opened her mouth to retort, but the mayor raised a hand, silencing her. "I know you have a strong personality," he continued, "and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But you have to learn to channel that energy in a more constructive way. Respecting authority and working within the system, rather than against it, will serve you much better in the long run." Karen felt a flush of embarrassment creep up her neck. She hated being lectured, especially by the very man she had so recently defied. But something in the mayor's tone gave her pause. There was a hint of genuine concern beneath the stern exterior. I'll try," she mumbled, her gaze fixed on the ground. The mayor nodded, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. "That's all I can ask. Now, let's get you started on those flower beds. I believe you have a green thumb, if I'm not mistaken." Karen blinked in surprise, her eyes darting up to meet the mayor's. "How did you?" "Oh, I had my ways," the mayor chuckled, his eyes twinkling. "Now, off you go. The sooner we get this done, the sooner you can be on your way." As Karen made her way to the flower bed, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of reluctant respect for the mayor. He had every right to be furious with her, yet he was showing her a surprising amount of understanding and even a hint of warmth. Perhaps this community service stint wouldn't be as painful as she had anticipated, and maybe, just maybe, she could learn a thing or two about how to navigate the system without resorting to her usual confrontational tactics. With a resigned sigh, Karen knelt down and began to carefully pull the weeds, determined to at least make a decent showing of it. After all, she had no desire to end up with that hefty fine. As the days turned into weeks, Karen found herself slowly adapting to her role as a community service volunteer. While it was far from her ideal way to spend her Saturdays, she had to admit that the work was not as unpleasant as she had expected. The mayor had been true to his word, ensuring that Karen was treated with respect and given tasks that seemed to align with her interests and skills. She found herself working alongside a diverse group of volunteers, from retired seniors to local high school students, all of whom seemed to share a genuine passion for improving their community. Despite her initial reluctance, Karen found herself gradually letting down her guard and even engaging in casual conversation with her fellow volunteers. She was surprised to discover that she actually enjoyed the camaraderie and sense of purpose that came with working towards a common goal. One particularly sunny Saturday, as Karen was carefully pruning a row of rose bushes, A young woman approached her with a warm smile. "Hi. I don't think we've officially met," the woman said, extending her hand. "I'm Sarah, one of the organizers for the beautification project." Karen wiped the sweat from her brow and grasped Sarah's hand, offering a tentative smile in return. "Nice to meet you. I'm Karen." "It's great to have you on the team, Karen," Sarah said, her eyes crinkling kindly. "I've noticed you've been working really hard these past few weeks. I just wanted to let you know that your efforts haven't gone unnoticed." Karen felt a flush of pride and embarrassment, unsure of how to respond. "Oh well, I'm just trying to do my part, that's all," she mumbled. Sarah nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I can tell this isn't exactly your idea of a good time, but I'm glad you're giving it a chance. Sometimes we all need a little nudge to step outside our comfort zones and see the bigger picture." Karen opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, a familiar voice interrupted them. "Ah, Sarah, there you are." The mayor strode over, a warm smile on his face. "I see you've introduced yourself to our newest volunteer." "Yes, Mayor Hastings," Sarah replied, her tone equally friendly. "I was just telling Karen how much we appreciate her hard work and dedication to the project." The mayor turned to Karen, his expression softening. "That's wonderful to hear. Karen, I must say, you've really impressed me with your willingness to get your hands dirty these past few weeks. It's a far cry from our initial encounter." Karen felt her cheeks flush, the memory of that day still fresh in her mind. "Well, I suppose I've learned that there's more to this whole community service thing than I realized," she admitted, her voice low. The mayor's smile widened. "Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. And you know, Karen, I have to say, I've always admired your passion and drive, even if it's occasionally misguided." He paused, his expression turning thoughtful. "Perhaps we could find a way to channel that energy into something more constructive, something that benefits the community as a whole." Karen blinked in surprise, her mind racing. "What do you mean?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. The mayor glanced around, his gaze sweeping over the bustling volunteers. "Well, as you can see, we have a lot of dedicated people here, all working towards a common goal. But we're always looking for new ideas, new perspectives. Someone with your, shall we say, tenacity could be a real asset to our team." Karen's heart began to pound in her chest. Was the mayor actually suggesting? "Are you saying you want me to join the beautification committee?" she blurted out, unable to contain her shock. The mayor chuckled, his eyes twinkling. "Something like that, yes. What do you say, Karen? Are you ready to put that fire in your belly to good use?" Karen's mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Part of her wanted to laugh in the mayor's face, while another part of her was inexplicably intrigued by the prospect. After all, this was a chance to turn her sometimes abrasive personality into a force for positive change, rather than just a source of conflict. Swallowing hard, Karen squared her shoulders and met the mayor's gaze. "All right, I'll do it," she said, her voice resolute. The mayor's smile widened, and he clapped a hand on Karen's shoulder. "Excellent. I knew you had it in you, Karen. Welcome to the team." As the mayor strode away, Sarah turned to Karen, her eyes alight with excitement. "This is going to be amazing, Karen. I can't wait to see what you bring to the table." Karen couldn't help but feel a twinge of trepidation, but there was also a spark of determination ignited within her. She had a chance to prove herself, to use her assertiveness for the greater good. And deep down, she knew that this was an opportunity she couldn't afford to pass up. Over the next few weeks, Karen found herself immersed in the world of community organizing, a far cry from her previous solitary existence. As a member of the beautification committee, she attended regular meetings, contributed ideas, and even took on leadership roles within various project initiatives. To her own surprise, Karen found that she was thriving in this new environment. Her natural assertiveness and problem-solving skills proved to be valuable assets, and she quickly gained the respect and admiration of her fellow committee members. One evening, after a particularly productive meeting, Karen found herself lingering behind, deep in conversation with the mayor. "I have to say, Karen, I'm impressed with the way you've thrown yourself into this work," the mayor said, his tone genuine. "Your passion and dedication are exactly what we need to take this project to the next level." Karen felt a surge of pride, but also a twinge of uncertainty. "Well, I have to admit, this isn't exactly what I expected when you first recruited me," she said, her brow furrowing. "But I have to give you credit. You were right. There is more to this than I realized." The mayor chuckled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "I'm glad you've come to see it that way. You know, Karen, I've always believed that the best way to create positive change is to work within the system, not against it." Karen nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "I suppose you have a point. And I have to say, it's been refreshing to be a part of something larger than myself." "Exactly," the mayor said, his expression earnest. "And you know, the more I've gotten to know you, the more I've come to believe that you have the potential to be a real asset to this community, not just through this beautification project, but in other ways as well." Karen's eyes widened, and she felt the fluttering in her chest. "What are you suggesting?" The mayor leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled contemplatively. "Well, Karen, I've been giving this a lot of thought, and I believe that you have the leadership qualities and the drive to make a real difference here. How would you feel about running for a seat on the city council?" Karen's mouth fell open, her mind racing. The city council? But I don't have any experience in politics. The mayor raised a hand, silencing her. "I understand your hesitation, Karen, but hear me out. Your passion, your commitment to this community, and your willingness to challenge the status quo. Those are exactly the qualities we need on the council. And with a little training and guidance, I believe you could be a powerful voice for the people." Karen sat in stunned silence, her head spinning. The idea of running for public office had never even crossed her mind, and she couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by the prospect. I don't know what to say," she finally managed, her voice small. The mayor leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Just think about it, Karen. This is an opportunity to truly make a difference, to be a champion for the residents of this town. And I'll be here to support you every step of the way." Karen nodded slowly, her mind still reeling. As the mayor bid her good night and headed for the door, Karen found herself staring at the empty conference room, her thoughts a whirlwind of uncertainty and possibility. Could she really do this? Could she step out of her comfort zone and into the spotlight of local politics? The idea was both thrilling and terrifying, and Karen couldn't help but wonder if she was truly ready for the challenge. But as she replayed the mayor's words in her mind, a spark of determination began to ignite within her. Maybe, just maybe, this was the chance she had been waiting for. The opportunity to channel her passion and energy into something truly meaningful. With a deep breath, Karen squared her shoulders and made her way out of the building, her mind already racing with ideas and strategies. She had a decision to make, and she knew that whatever path she chose, it would undoubtedly change the course of her life forever. Over the next few weeks, Karen found herself in a whirlwind of activity as she grappled with the mayor's unexpected offer. On the one hand, the prospect of running for city council filled her with a sense of excitement and purpose, a chance to truly make a difference in her community. But on the other, the sheer magnitude of the undertaking left her feeling overwhelmed and uncertain. During her daily walks around the neighborhood, Karen found herself constantly weighing the pros and cons, her mind a jumble of conflicting emotions. Could she really step out of her comfort zone and into the public spotlight? Did she have what it took to navigate the complexities of local politics? And perhaps most importantly, would the residents of the town even be willing to give her a chance? One afternoon, as Karen was tending to her garden, she was surprised by an unexpected visitor. Sarah, the community organizer she had befriended through the beautification project. "Karen, I'm so glad I caught you," Sarah exclaimed, her eyes alight with enthusiasm. "I've been meaning to talk to you about the mayor's offer. Have you given it any more thought? Karen felt a familiar pang of trepidation, but she also couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. I have. Actually, she replied, wiping the sweat from her brow. It's all I've been able to think about, to be honest. Sarah nodded, her expression thoughtful. I can only imagine how overwhelming this must feel. Running for office is no small feat, especially for someone who's never been involved in politics before. Karen sighed, her shoulders sagging. You're telling me. I mean, I always thought I was a pretty tough cookie, but this is a whole different ballgame. But that's exactly why the mayor thinks you're the perfect person for the job, Sarah countered, her tone earnest. Your passion, your determination, your willingness to challenge the status quo. Those are all qualities that could make you an incredible asset on the city council. Karen couldn't help but feel a flicker of pride at Sarah's words, but the nagging sense of doubt still lingered. I don't know, Sarah. What if I'm just not cut out for this kind of thing? What if I end up embarrassing myself or, worse, letting the people of this town down? Sarah reached out and grasped Karen's hand, her eyes warm and reassuring. Hey, listen to me. You're not going to be doing this alone, you know. The mayor, the city council, the entire community, we're all here to support you. And I know that with the right guidance and your own determination, you can do this. Karen felt a lump form in her throat, overwhelmed by the genuine belief and encouragement in Sarah's voice. Could she really pull this off? Could she truly make a difference? I suppose it's worth a shot, Karen finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But I have to warn you, I'm not exactly known for playing by the rules. Sarah's lips quirked into a mischievous grin. That's exactly why we need you, Karen. This town could use a little shake-up, don't you think? Karen couldn't help but chuckle, the tension in her shoulders easing ever so slightly. All right then. I guess I'm in. Sarah let out a delighted squeal and pulled Karen into a warm hug. This is going to be amazing, Karen. I just know it. As Sarah pulled away, Karen couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of determination. She may have been stepping into the unknown, but for the first time, she felt a glimmer of excitement rather than fear. This was her chance to make a real difference, to prove that her tough cookie persona could be channeled into something positive and impactful. With a deep breath, Karen rolled up her sleeves and turned back to her garden, her mind already racing with ideas and strategies. She had a campaign to plan, and she wasn't about to let anyone, or anything, stand in her way. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity for Karen as she threw herself headfirst into her campaign for a seat on the city council. With the unwavering support of the mayor and the community organizers, she quickly found her footing, honing her message and rallying the residents of the town to her cause. Gone were the days of Karen's solitary existence, replaced by a flurry of meet and greets, town hall meetings, and door-to-door canvassing. She found herself engaging with her neighbors in a way she had never done before, listening to their concerns and ideas, and articulating a vision for a better, more vibrant community. To her own surprise, Karen discovered that she had a natural talent for public speaking, her once abrasive personality giving way to a fiery, charismatic presence that captivated audiences. She spoke passionately about the need for better infrastructure, increased investment in local businesses, and a more transparent and responsive local government. As the campaign season wore on, Karen's name and face became increasingly familiar throughout the town. She attended every local event, volunteered at community organizations, and even hosted her own neighborhood barbecues, all in an effort to connect with as many constituents as possible. And the hard work paid off. As the ballots were tallied on election night, Karen found herself the victor, securing a decisive win and earning a seat on the city council. As she stood on the steps of City Hall, surrounded by a sea of cheering supporters, Karen couldn't help but feel a swell of pride and accomplishment. She had come so far from that fateful day when she had unwittingly confronted the town's mayor, and now she was poised to become a key player in shaping the future of her community. In the days and weeks that followed, Karen threw herself into her new role with characteristic enthusiasm. She quickly immersed herself in the workings of local government, attending countless meetings, studying policy proposals, and advocating tirelessly for the issues that mattered most to her constituents. Despite the steep learning curve, Karen found that her unique blend of passion, assertiveness, and political savvy served her well. She wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo, to question the decisions of her fellow council members, and to push for bold, innovative solutions to the town's problems. And much to her surprise, Karen found that her colleagues on the council, including the mayor, were receptive to her ideas and willing to work with her to find common ground. They recognized the value she brought to the table, her unwavering commitment to the betterment of the community, and her ability to connect with the people in a way that traditional politicians often struggle to do. As the months passed, Karen's reputation as a no-nonsense, results-oriented councilwoman began to precede her. She became a fixture in the local media, her every move and pronouncement scrutinized and debated by the town's residents. But rather than shrinking from the spotlight, Karen embraced it, using it as a platform to amplify her message and rally support for her initiatives. And slowly but surely, Karen began to see the tangible results of her efforts. New businesses opened, community programs were expanded, and the town's infrastructure saw much-needed upgrades. The residents of the town, once skeptical of this political newcomer, began to see her as a champion for their needs, a voice for the people in the halls of power. As Karen sat in her office, poring over the latest reports and proposals, she couldn't help but marvel at how far she had come. From a reluctant community service volunteer to a respected and influential member of the city council, it was a transformation that still seemed almost surreal. But as she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point, Karen knew that she had truly found her calling. This was where she belonged, fighting for the people and the community that she loved. And she was more determined than ever to continue making a difference, no matter what challenges lay ahead. As Karen's first term on the city council drew to a close, she found herself reflecting on the remarkable journey that had brought her to this point. What had started as a reluctant foray into community service had blossomed into a fulfilling and impactful career in local politics, one that had allowed her to make a real difference in the lives of her fellow residents. The road had not been an easy one, however. Karen had faced countless challenges and obstacles along the way, from skeptical constituents to entrenched bureaucratic resistance. But with her signature blend of tenacity, strategic thinking, and unwavering passion, she had managed to overcome them all. One of the most significant turning points in Karen's political journey had come in the form of an unexpected encounter: her initial confrontation with the town's mayor, Robert Hastings. At the time, it had seemed like the most humiliating and frustrating experience of her life, but in retrospect, it had been the catalyst that set her on this remarkable path. As Karen sat in her office, poring over the latest reports and proposals, a small smile tugged at the corners of her lips. She couldn't help but marvel at the irony of it all. The man she had once unceremoniously kicked out of her home was now one of her closest allies and supporters on the city council. In fact, it was the mayor himself who had reached out to her that fateful day, recognizing the potential in her fiery personality and her deep commitment to the community. And it was his continued guidance and mentorship that had helped Karen navigate the complexities of local politics and become the respected and influential leader she was today. Now, as Karen prepared to embark on her second term, she couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and determination. There was still so much work to be done, so many ambitious goals to achieve. But this time, she was armed with the experience, the connections, and the unwavering support of her constituents. As she made her way to the council chambers for the swearing-in ceremony, Karen couldn't help but reflect on how much her life had changed in the span of just a few years. Gone were the days of her solitary, frustrated existence. In their place was a vibrant, fulfilling career that allowed her to make a tangible difference in the lives of the people she cared about. And as she took her seat at the council table, surrounded by her colleagues and the cheering crowd of supporters, Karen knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. This was her calling, her purpose, to be a voice for the people, to fight for the betterment of her community, and to never back down in the face of adversity. With a deep breath, Karen turned to the mayor, who offered her a warm smile and a subtle nod of encouragement. It was time to get to work, to continue the transformation that had begun with that fateful encounter all those months ago. As the gavel fell and the meeting commenced, Karen felt a surge of determination coursing through her veins. She was ready to tackle the challenges ahead, to push the boundaries, and to leave an indelible mark on the town she loved. This was her moment, and she was not about to let anyone, or anything, stand in her way.